4 o'clock Eastern time, everybody. So we will go ahead and get started. Thank you guys all for attending this presentation at the MNP Symposium. We are super excited to be able to put this on. This is the 5th MNP Symposium we've had the pleasure of doing. And it's fully funded by the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society. So I want to thank them for allowing this to happen and for giving all of you guys the opportunity to come and learn for free. So that is why we're here, and we are excited for this presentation. We had presentations all day yesterday, this morning, and obviously now, and then we will have more presentations tomorrow. So super excited for that, and hope you guys have been able to and will join us for more presentations as it works with your guys' schedule. I will go over a few housekeeping type things before I introduce our speaker for the hour. The first of which being there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if at any time throughout the presentation you have questions or comments or anything, you can put them in there, and we'll have a designated time for questions at the end of the presentation. I'll facilitate that. So just as you think of them, you can put them in there, or you can wait till the end, whatever you guys prefer. The other thing that I will mention is that we're recording this, and so if you really liked it and want to recommend it to someone else, or you want to watch another NMP Symposium presentation that you didn't get to see, they will all be on our website roughly 2 weeks after the NMP Symposium, so in roughly 2 weeks. Awesome, that is all that I have. So George, I'll have you unmute yourself and turn your video on. Just unmute yourself, I think. And I'll do
Hello, everybody. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Then this for this presentation, we have Dr. George. He is talking to us about the standardization and quality control of ancient Athenian coinage, which works very well because he is an engineer currently working in standardization. So he obviously has experience and expertise in this area, and so we are excited to learn from him over the next hour. So George, I will let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you also this year. I'm gonna present today a topic related to standardization and quality control of Athenian coinage, ancient coinage. My work is in standardization sector in conformity assessment, so I'm very happy that I can combine my job and my hobby. So it is not so easy to find sources for standardization issues in ancient world, but I did my search, and I would be happy today to present you some of this work that combines, as I mentioned, both my business and my hobby. So when we are talking about the study of coinage and standardization and quality control, actually all that started from the need to identify fakes. So in ancient world, they had also fakes like we have now, and the state, the government had to create some kind of mechanism to identify fakes and identify the original coins. So I will present in today the approach they had and how they standardized this process. So when in general, when we talk about standardization, we talk about the process of making something to conform to a standard. So this is the official definition in nowadays also in the engineering world. And, when we say a standard and we use this term, this is a much wider term. A standard could be a document that it is established by subject matter experts and approved by an authority, a regulator, or an organization that provides guidance on the design, use, or performance of materials, products, and processes. So the standards, these modern standards include know-how and describe best practices, safety procedures, and so on. So this is about the modern meaning on standard, but in reality, the standard has many more meanings. So, for example, in metrology, which is the science of measurement, the standard is not a document that describes best practices or describes requirements about the product or a service, but is an object. It is a system or an experiment that we are using in order to define a unit of measurement or a physical quantity. So you see on the photo, for example, those are ancient weights that they go 2,500 years ago, like something like we have today, ounces, pounds, and so on, or grams. That's the logic of definition of a unit of measurement. So in ancient time, the people also developed standards to identify and standardize the meaning, the idea of length, of area, mass, weight, volume, even time and currency. So the way that people are applying standardization can have many different implementations. And in the monetary world, the coinage, let's say, over there we use the term monetary standard. So monetary standards we had from ancient time until today. And in reality, a monetary standard refers to the set of the monetary arrangements that they are governing the supply of money. Of course, this assumes that there is the definition of money. And in the civilized world today, we know each country has its own monetary standard. We have dollar in the United States, euro in Europe, and so on. But also in ancient time, even that time, there was a need to have a standardized approach on the coinage, on the circulation of money. And we have the monetary standards as they were defined in different city-states in Greece, for example, where is now Greece, Turkey, and the East Mediterranean. And it is interesting that the principle of money was not the same in the ancient world. For example, all these people, all you people and myself, including that they were collecting coins, do you have ancient Egyptian coins? I'm not talking, be careful, I'm not talking about Hellenistic period. I'm not talking about the coins that they were issued by Ptolemy, because actually the families of Ptolemy and Hellenistic period in Egypt, it was transferred from Greece. I'm talking about ancient Egyptian coinage with pharaohs and so on. So we don't. And the reason we don't have coins is not because they were not developed, but because the principle of supply of money at that moment, it was totally different. So it was exchange of products and goods. They had monetary references, but they didn't visualize it and they didn't realize in ancient Egypt in the form of coinage. So the coinage in ancient Egypt was introduced through the commerce they had to perform with the Greek city-states or all that region, Phoenician and so on, that they were using coinage. So the reason I'm emphasizing today about the standardization and quality control of the ancient Athenian and Greek coinage in general is because that is the area of the Western, let's say, world that we see how the coins were developed and how a standardized approach was utilized by the governments of each city-state at that time. So, for example, the standard it was very usual to have the stater or a drachm and denominations of those reference coinage that would be multiples of subdivisions of stater, drachm, and so on. So you could have in different cities, different denomination, but the logic was the same. So if you want to go a little bit at the beginning of the coinage, and you would like to say, okay, how drachm was developed and why it is called drachma, okay, and why 1 drachma, it was defined with 6 obols, and the system also had less and less divisions or higher divisions. It is very interesting to search about it and see that in like 3,000 years ago from now, that it is defined as the late prehistoric age to a period to 1100 BC to 750 BC. The coinage was not existing as we know it now, but as you can see on the picture on the right, top right, they were using as a reference exchange of monetary value some rods of bronze, and in ancient Greek, the word was ovelos, which means in reality this each one of these speech rods of copper or bronze, and 6 of them, 6 obols oveli. So was it is exactly how much the human hand can easily grab. So the word for grabbing is the verb in ancient Greek is drato, which means I grab something. So when I grab 6 obols, it is 1 drachma, because drachma comes from the verb drato, which is exactly the definition of the word. So now you know how this ancient reference to a coinage that it is called drachma, it is very popular, comes from. It's coming from the 6 rods that one human hand can grab. So it is very interesting, and this actual obols, ancient, the first initial obols, this is the speech, can be seen today, even today, in the Numismatic Museum of Athens in Greece. So if you visit sometime in Greece and you go to Athens, it will be a great opportunity to visit the Numismatic Museum and see those actual finds of the archaeologists of this ancient obols, and the definition of the drachma. In the Athenian monetary standard, the value of the coin was interrelated with each weight. So the drachma was defined as what we today say 4.3 grams. It was silver, and the very popular tetradrachm that we all know with the owl and Athena, it was 4 drachma. Tetra means 4. 4 drachma, it was 17.2 grams of silver. It's a very popular coin, and at that time was like, let's say, the global standard. That's why there are many of them, and they can be found all over the Mediterranean area. Same way we say today the dollar is the global currency, and you can go all over the world and use dollars and find dollars. The same time, that time, Athens was the, let's say, the big power of the state cities in the region, and drachma was the most popular coin, and that's why also it was imitated, because it was very popular and it was circulating all over the known world at that time. Many fakes were issued, and in order to facilitate the global that time trade, the governments that time had to develop mechanisms to identify the fakes. So the standardization process of the coinage was they used whatever applicable methods that I'm going to present you in a while. They had this time in order to identify the fakes. So you see in my presentation here not only the drachma, but you see also all the denominations, starting from deca. Deca in Greek is 10, from 10 drachmae, all the way down to tetrartimorion and hemitetrartimorion. Although those were not very popular, I could say that in ancient Greece, obol was the smaller coin you could the poor people could use, which was 1/6 of 1 drachma. Obol actually, as I told you, started from the representation of the 1 spit of copper and bronze. Was there only Athenian standard? No, there were more monetary standards developed on that region that it is considered like the cradle of Western civilization. So we had the Achaean standard. Achaia is a city, whereas in the northern Peloponnese, you can see my, I'm indicating you right now, the Aegina standard. The Aegina standard is a small island, very close to Athens. Actually, it was older than the Athenian standard, but Aegina was not so strong city-state, and after a while it was absorbed by Athens. Over there we have the famous coin with the turtle. So this is the monetary standard that started from Aegina with the stater that was 12.4 grams of silver. Of course, the Attic standard is the Athenian standard I just explained you. We have the Euboean standard. Euboea is this island here that they have their own currency. Chios, this island close to where is Turkey now, it was Ionia and Lydia at that time. In that region of the world, actually, the first coinage, modern coinage in Western world was developed. So we have the coins that are coming from Lydia and Mysia and Chios and Mytilene, Lesbos. So this is the area of the world that introduced the first coins. And we have the Chian standard with the stater of 15.6 gram. And in Miletus, a little bit southern, we have the Melesian standard that was based on a stater of 14.2. As you can see, the weight was very similar, but it was not identical. Of course, the ancient businessmen, traders, they knew exactly the equivalence between all these different coins. Now, the logic of standardization, it was not evolved only on monetary standards, but at that time we had such development, such growth in the technical world that it is not even understood nowadays, that the logic of standard was even at that time documented. If you remember, I told you at the beginning of the presentation that the modern standards are documents, that they describe processes or they set requirements about many different technical, let's say, construction structures, products, and so on. So 4th century BC, already the engineers were describing their standards in ancient documents that, of course, it was not in paper at the time, but it was in columns or in stele, as they called the time, marble stele. So what you see on the photo here is the first ancient standard, documented standard. I'm not talking of reference material. I'm not talking of coins, but I'm talking about inscripted standard, a technical engineering standard that was found in a city called Elefsis, which is a few miles outside of Athens. This standard was developed was written on the 4th century BC. So we're talking like 2400 years before now. It is considered the most ancient standard we know because probably there were more, but we didn't find them yet. So this is the most ancient found documented prescription, inscription that is setting specifications for the composition of bronze dowels placed between the drums of the columns of the ancient buildings. So the specification makes reference to the chemical composition and the manufacturing process of those bronze fittings. Though you may ask me, George, what this has to do with coins? It has to do, because it shows that the technology at that time was mature enough, not only to say, oh, it has to be around 14 grams, but for a coin, but it was mature enough to define chemical composition of materials and, of course, define processes. Exactly the same way we are thinking the modern engineers when we are setting standards. So even in our standards today, we are describing the process, how to produce a material. And if you go to this ancient standard, you will see that there is a part of the standard saying to shape hard bronze into the lathe, into cylindrical dowels according to a particular sample. So describes also not only the chemical composition, but it also describes the process. So in those photos here, you see the buildings, the type of building we are talking that time. You see the columns of marble, and in order to keep the pieces of the marble stabilized and centered, they were using these bronze dowels fittings. Here they are. And here you can see a modern representation of those two pieces that this ancient standard is talking about. Their name at that time was Polos and Empolio, that it was actually the fittings between two different pieces of marble inside the ancient construction. So the technology was in a mature level to set standards for a metallic structure, which in reality is not an expensive structure. So think, if you are setting a standard for such, let's say, not expensive part, how careful you have to be with coinage, that it is the structure of your economy and of your monetary system. So this logic proves that the government at that time, the states, they had the appropriate maturity, not only to introduce a monetary standard, but also to develop appropriate technical specifications related to the standard. I mentioned before, just from curiosity, that there was in the standard of that time a reference to the composition, and the composition was the chemical composition of those parts I mentioned before. Actually, the standard says that the copper must be produced in Marius, which is a metallurgical center in Cyprus of that time, and it was considered high quality, and it should be consisted by 12 parts, and 11 of them should be copper and 1 of tin. So we're talking about a composition of 92% copper and 8% tin. And the important thing also when you read the standard is that to understand when the engineers set a standard, they are in position also to check. So what is the meaning to say 92% copper and 8% tin if you cannot control it and if you cannot check it? So the maturity of the technology and the standardization world does not only is dedicated or emphasizing on setting the standard, but also on the quality control. And quality control is the technique to check that. And the ancient technology was competent enough to introduce the appropriate quality control methods to check the properties of the material. And not only this poly and empolia that you see in this photo, but also to extend to the coinage. And I'm coming now to a second stele. Stele is this piece of marble that comes similar period, 357 BC, that it is the famous Nikophon standard. This is about coinage. The first standard I did show you that was a little bit older is about construction material and metallurgy. The second standard that I'm going to show you now is the standard that it was probably 50, 60, 70 years younger than the previous one. And it is a reference to the monetary standardization. And it is also a standard or a law, call it whatever you want, or a regulation that it describes the process of quality control. So as I told you before, you cannot only set requirements, you cannot only set specifications. As an engineer, you have to be in position also to check it. So in this example here, we have the appropriate specification, technical specification that the ancient Athenians set in order to check the fakes of their coins and provide the process also regarding the quality control of the Athenian coinage, the money supply, regulate the everyday trade transactions, and ensure the enforcement of contracts. So this I could say is a more, although it's a typical specification, of quality control. It is also related to the performance of trade and how to guarantee that the fakes are not circulating in the market. Therefore, if you are an engineer, you call it a specification, and we call it Nikophone's specification or standard. If you are a lawyer or economist, you will call it Nikophone's law on silver coinage. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter how you call it. And this specification does not only defines the process of checking the fakes, the coinage, in order to identify the fakes, but it is also introducing the logic that in the modern world we call them inspector. So in modern world, when we want to go and as an engineers to check compliance with specification, we're using people that we are calling them inspectors. In that time, they were calling them dokimastes, and the dokimastes is actually the experts that they are doing the trials, the inspection in reality process, the testing process, in order to identify the fakes or the good coins on the ancient time. So this is the stele, this is the piece of marble, the actual one, that it is also, you can go in Athens again today and find it and see it, the actual piece on the Stoa of Attalos, which is very close to the ancient Parthenon. Actually, Stoa of Attalos was the ancient market of Greece. And over there, it was also the place that they were producing their coins. So it was very close to the center of the monetary system of Athens, and also to the center, the market, that they were using these coins. So that's where you can find this coin, this specification today. So the responsibilities that this specification is defining for the inspectors, the dokimastes, is to identify and remove the counterfeit coins from the circulation. And whatever is good, then it can go back to circulation. Whatever coin is fake, it has to be removed. Now, what they were doing with the fake coins, actually, they were dedicated to the sanctuary of Kiveli, which was the mother of gods. There was a temple in Athens dedicated to Kiveli. Kiveli is an ancient deity, older than the 12 gods of Olympus. Actually, Kiveli was the mother of the 12 gods of Olympus, and in her temple, they were dedicating the fakes. Actually, are well aware that the gods don't really need money. So it's okay to give them the fakes. No need to provide them the originals. So we are very well also aware of all these cuts that we can see on Athenian coinage or other coinage. Many of these cuts was an indication that the coin is fake. They were cutting it, was useless. Okay. Now you may ask me, what are the technology that was used in order to check the coins at that time? Definitely it was the scale, because the coinage of that time was defined based on weight. Now you may ask me, do we have such a scale? Unfortunately, although there are references, the archaeologists don't have, did not discover actual scales for coins. They discovered scales, but for commercial products. They expect, or they believe, that the ancient scales for coins looked like something you can see on this photo here. This is a much later sample of an Ottoman Empire period, and we're talking then about 1400, 1500 AC. But they expect the technology did not evolve so much from the ancient time, all those years, that the ancient scales for coins would look also something like this. And with such a scale, it is possible to check both dimensions. You see here the different diameters, different levels that correspond to different diameters of coins. Also, you can put the coin and you can put a counterweight and measure the weight of the coin. So with this method, you can check mass, you can check dimension, and if the coin had the proper weight, it was considered authentic and it could go back to circulation. If not, it would be, or if it was a silver-plated lead, or it was something else, it could be considered as counterfeit. That was one of the testing methods. The other testing methods that they were using that time, that it is described on a different document, which is the Aristophanes play the frogs. It is the method of acoustic emission, as we call it now, that it is described when you strike a coin on a hard surface and it creates a specific noise that reflects in reality to the frequency of the material that it is made. So if it is made of pure silver, it will have a different sound if it is just lead and which is covered with silver. So this, with this approach, the coinage would be checked with sight. The inspectors would look at the coin, touch it, feel it, and use the sound, this acoustic emission method. So they could easily identify if it was real gold, real silver, and this is a non-destructive method. They didn't have to destroy or cut or whatever the coin. And they could also estimate other, in general, other properties of the material that it would help them to say, yes, it is fake or not. And if you are doing this process a few thousand times per week, then you are very competent and to easily understand the fake or not. So I just presented you the two methods of quality control that testing in reality of the coins that we know that they were used in ancient time. And here you can see the Nikophon law about the silver coinage as a decision tree that describes in reality the whole process of the control of the coins. So I'm not going to explain everything because it's a little bit complex and takes some time, but it is a decision tree that provides in details all the steps needed for the inspectors to identify, to check, test, and judge if the coin is good or not. So in this flow chart, the gray boxes correspond to decision points that they have to be made by the experts. The white boxes refer to what happens to the fakes, okay? And then in italics, you see what is the cost to individuals and to Athenian state, depending on the findings. I would like to say at this point that this presentation is also will be also in video and will be in public domain. Also, if you want to have a copy, in all my PowerPoints, I have my email address on the bottom left. So anytime you are, I will be happy to receive your email to send you a copy of this presentation, because I know we don't have enough time to go in details to all the requirements and all the prescription one by one that they are set in the Nikophon specification. So to just give you an idea also, which is interesting about, I mentioned before that there are many different city-states issuing their own coins. About the circulation of those coins, you will see that in different hoards that they were found by the archaeologists, and they correspond to different centuries. When you say fourth, fifth, it means 5th century BC or 4th century BC. So you can see that how many counts were in different hoards from different cities and the percentage of those coins. Also, although you may say, oh, Athenian coins is only 6% or here or for 18% here, in reality, it is big percentage because there were many different hundreds of different coins. So the more popular coins were coming from Athens, Syracuse, Aegina, Akraga, and so on. So the distribution of these coins was not only found in Athens. These percentages correspond to different distributions of coinage that it was found on different areas of the Mediterranean Sea. So the commerce was very strong, going around all that states, city-states of that period, and they were using a mix of different coins. So that's why when you go to whatever is other areas, different countries, they go to Marseille in France, or you go even to Spain, you can easily find Athenian or Aegina coinage all over distributed in Egypt and everywhere else. So let's go back to our specification now. The classification of the coin is very important, because when you are performing a standardization process of testing, then you have somehow to identify the output of this process. And the classification of coinage is this output in our case. So they were they're classifying the coins as prototypes. Prototypes were the coins that were appropriate on the dimension and on the weight, and they were issued by the state of Athens, and they were considered as originals. So there were artistic imitations, medallions, that were clearly distinguishable from the prototypes, and they may have different functions. There were official plated and debased coins. Be careful, even Athens, during wars and during the Persian wars, they didn't have so much silver to issue originals. So in purpose, they issued the same coinage, but it was just silver plated, and they were bronze owls. In this case, after the war, they knew that, and they collect them back, and they removed them from circulation. So the coin could be original, but if the inspector could identify that it was the official plated coins of the city of Athens, they will just also remove it from circulation, of course, after the war. There were also anonymous imitations, that they were copies, that they were very close copies to the original. And if they had the appropriate dimensions and weight in silver, they were not considered fakes. Because the important at that time, it was not the artistic presentation, if the owl was so beautiful and so on, but actually the value of the coin was each weight in silver. So if the coin, even if it was an anonymous imitation, had the appropriate weight, dimensions, then it could be considered for circulation. But there was a warning that this coin is not an original Athenian coin, it is an imitation. There were also the so-called marked imitations, that there were relatively close copies of the prototypes, but they were very clearly distinguished, and they were very clear to distinguish, but they had additional symbols and so on, and it was very difficult to confuse with prototypes. I would like to make a small interruption here and say that in ancient time, many fakes were not produced just to cheat and steal in silver and so on. They were produced because they, in many areas of that world, the world that time, they had no enough quantity of currency, of coinage, and in order to facilitate their trade, they were developing coins. So they were imitating the Athenian owls, not to cheat, but just to have more coins and do their trade business. So in that case, it was, they didn't want to cheat anybody. They just wanted to facilitate their life. In this case, the quantity of silver was correct, but the image was not so delicate and beautiful like the Athenian one, or they could put some additional symbols in there to identify that this is not original Athenian. Then we had imitations that they were prepared in order to cheat, and they were counterfeit, plated, debased coins that they were manufactured for the purpose of deception. Sorry. So all these possibilities were there, and they were on the table. Now I'm presenting you here these categories I just mentioned before, the 6 main categories. I'm presenting you here some examples with the appropriate references, and a good prototype, for example, is the example number 1. In example number 6 is a totally different counterfeit, plate and debased. Look also how the artistic impression is totally different from the original and so on. In the middle, there are imitations that they are not so bad, and there are imitations that could be acceptable. So in the process of the classification of the coins, the documastes, the inspectors, were using a specific terminology. So they were using the word document, when a document means passed. It is accepted, certified, and approved. Okay, they are using the word bad, like that it has to be removed from circulation. They were used the word xenikon. Xenos in Greek means foreigner. So if it was kalon, kalon is good. And xenikon means that it is an acceptable foreign coin that it can return to the owner because it has the appropriate value and weight of silver, but it could also be bad than xenikon, which is mean that it's a foreign but bad coin, and it should be removed from circulation. So here I have from you, but we don't have the time to read you an actual part text of the standard, but I would like you to have a taste of how they were wording a standard at that time. For example, it says Athenian silver coin shall be accepted by all sellers of goods when it is found by the inspector to be solid silver and has the public stamp. The public approver shall sit between the banker tables in the agora, the market, and approve coins on these terms every day, except when there is a deposit of money, in which case he sits in the council building and so on, blah, blah, blah. So there is a full detailed description, even where they sit and what day they're going to go and do the testing and the process and so on. So we are talking about this Nikophon specification, Nikophon standard, Nikophon law. Who was this guy? Why we call it Nikophon? Actually, in the stele on the script, there is his name, that this decision was taken after a proposal of Nikophon. The archaeologists did search and they found there were few potential Nikophons. The more probable case it was that we're talking about a Nikophon who was member of the parliament at the time of Asian Athens. He was like a congressman, and he introduced that decision, and it was voted. Of course, there are a few more Nikophons in the same period, but this guy is the most popular. So also before the end of my presentation, I have a few pictures. How was the agora? Agora was the market in ancient Athens. It was where all the business was taking on. If you go today, you cannot see all these buildings. They're not left, but you can see this building here, which was the actual market, and it's very similar to a modern mall. So it is a long building with 2 levels, and there are small stores for different businessmen, let's say, and different traders. And there was a long covered area that you could go visit, even if it was rain, it was no problem. So that was the area where the main business was performed. Of course, all that area was the market of ancient Athens, and also politics, business, religious issues were discussed as part of the everyday life. So these coins we're talking about, they were circulating in this area mainly, and also the controllers, the documastes, the inspectors were exactly located at this point. So also in the law, it says that another group of inspectors should be at the port of Piraeus. Piraeus is a city close to Athens by the sea. That was the commercial port. So when the ships were coming and from other countries, city-states of that time, and they were bringing money, they had to go through that control in the port to check about the quality of the money. So this is how the, sorry, this stoa, the old market, looks today. It's totally renovated. It's one of the most beautiful buildings to visit. I personally call it as the ancient mall, the first ancient mall. Many traders were inside on 2 levels. a very nice and important part of the life of ancient Athenians. So that's where the coins that they were usually exchanged in that area. You can see also here a transaction, a commercial transaction. They would pay money in this area, in the area of the old market, in order to buy this jar. So all this was a mechanism to facilitate everyday life in ancient Athens, Greece, and in general, the ancient world. I have some references here for your help, and I think that that's how we, concluding this presentation, I would like to see that this ancient owl, the first monetary standard of ancient Athens, is still alive today inside the Greek euro. So the Greek euro, as it is circulating right now, it includes an exact copy of the ancient owl, but unfortunately today it's not silver, so it is just clad. It's just €1. So thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you very much for your patience to listen to me, and I would be happy to reply to any questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. George. That was very insightful. I enjoyed that a lot. Excuse me. If you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
Yes, yes,
so everyone
sure.
can see you nice and big on the screen.
Sure. Done.
Perfect.
I can also see the questions and box opened.
Okay, I can read them off to you.
Yes, please.
That might be easier. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we will get to those right now. Someone says 2 questions. We'll go one at a time with this one. How did people agree on what 4.3 grams weighed across city-states?
Yes. Okay. The weight, it was also specific. In my first PowerPoint, if you remember, I did show you reference weights of that time. So they had also their own reference. They didn't call it gram at the time. We call it now. But they have a small piece of metal that it was exactly what should be the weight of a coin. So they could use this balance I did show you from a later period. So they were putting the reference standard of the expected weight of one coin, and then they were putting on the other side the coin, and they could measure if it is. So for that time, it was not 4.3. In our standard is 4.3, but they had that time their own reference weight, and they were correlating it. Second question.
Okay. Yep. Second question. Is there a reference to see what the marked imitation symbols look like? Okay.
In general, the moment that it was a fake and they want just to mark imitation, they were creating this line. They were scratching it, and they were throwing it to the box that it would go to the temple. So there was no any special mark to show that it is an imitation. If it was fake, it was destroyed in reality. They were destroying the coin.
We have what looks like a long comment with a question at the end. So I'll read that out.
Okay, let's go.
I collect ancient Greek era coins. I've been told that the reason there are less of them than ancient Roman era coins is because the Greeks considered coins to be representation of the gods, and therefore striking errors being in circulation would have been offensive to them. Is that true?
From my involvement, although I'm not an archaeologist or a coin expert, I don't have this information. There are many coins in ancient Greece that they don't have gods on them. They have animals, they have just symbols. Okay, the coin from Aegina, as I told you, which is one of the more ancient coins, it has one turtle, and then it has a TK symbol. It's not God, so it's not related to any deity or so on. So from the point of view, I could not interconnect that. The other issue is that when we say, can we go back to the question, please? Scroll back. Let me see. Okay. You are using the term in this question that error coin. Error coin does not mean fake automatically. Error coin can be distorted coin. Also, from the technology they were using that time to develop, to create the coins, it was very possible to have error coins. That's why you have double sometimes, or it's not very clear. So their technology to develop coins was not so delicate and not so perfect as in nowadays. Actually, they didn't care, because what was the logic? The logic that you had the coin, what was for them? A piece of metal with appropriate weight. Now the symbol of it was just the stamp of the state. That was just an indication where this coin comes from. So for them, if the weight was correct, even if it was not so beautiful stamped, it was not considered error coin, and it could circulate, okay? So the critical point was the weight. It was not even the diameter. The diameter was not important, because it was manually produced. The load that the technician was applying to the mold to make the coin could be different every time. So some of them could be thicker, some of them should be thinner, and when the coin is thicker, the diameter can be a little bit less. Approximately, it was close by, but there was a variation. But the important thing was the weight. So what you were buying using a coin was how many grams in our scale today was that coin, and that was the important. So, but I could not interconnect with this religious story, because many of the coins were not related to religion in ancient Greece.
Okay. We have someone that asked, how did you get the idea to combine your hobby and your work for this research?
Okay, I am an engineer by profession and by study, okay? But from 10 years old, I am collecting coins. At that time, as I understand from my long Greek name, I'm of Greek origin. I live in America. I'm an American citizen. But when I was a young kid, I was in Greece. And in Greece, it's illegal to have ancient coins. So my only choice to collect was modern coins. But it doesn't really matter. So when I came to America many years ago, I extended my hobby to include ancient coins. And although the standardization process in modern coins is very easy, I was always puzzled how the ancient coins were standardized and how the ancient people implemented the principles of standardization in their everyday life. So I was surprised to find out that the archaeologists has already found all these prescriptions with ancient standards, either related to construction, either related to coinage. So for me, it was an exciting subject. And that's why I interconnected my hobby with my research, okay, to present to you.
Okay, awesome. Here's another question. I don't exactly know what it's getting at, but I'll just read it off. Was the process of cutting the coins because simply weighing the coins was not accurate enough, or was not always accurate? Okay,
the way they were doing is that they had the two pieces that they were making together with pressure. So there was like a negative. They were expecting to be filled with material, and some material will go away. So in general, not the volume, but the weight was very accurate. So when we say very accurate, we could say on the, let's say 17.2 grams. So according to our own standard, it was not going to be 16.9. It could be 17.2, 17.1, 17.3. So they were very close, okay? That it was a very accurate, let's say, process. But it was, of course, affected by the process of manufacturing, which was 100% manual. They didn't have automatic presses. They didn't have automatic molding systems and so on. So definitely the process of cutting the coins was affecting the weight. Also, it was mainly affecting the dimensions. The dimensions could not be so well standardized. Of course, they were evolving as time was passing by. And if you notice how are the coins, how they look, the ancient coins of 600, 500 BC to the Athenian coinage, and then to the Roman or Hellenistic period, they are all this process becoming more standardized and becoming better and better. It is improvement by time.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Someone just said, incredible answer to my error question. So he really
okay, I just
answer.
want to say at the end that as a disclaimer, I am not archaeologist, I am not numismatist, okay, I'm an engineer. So I try to apply my engineering knowledge on my hobby, which is the coinage and collection of coins. So if I made a mistake or I don't know all the details of this, the science of numismatics, I apologize for that.
Oh, that's all good. Okay, it does not look like we have any more questions in the queue. So I'll start wrapping this up, but if anyone has any more questions, feel free to put them in there and we'll answer them before we log off. But Dr. George, thank you for taking time out of your day and coming to present with us. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the attendees got a lot out of it as well. You're very knowledgeable, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Andy. And I'm also once again, I want to thank all the attendees who spent their valuable time to listen to my presentation. Yeah,
and for all the attendees, we have one more presentation tonight, starting at 5:30, I believe. Yep, 5:30. So tune in for that if you guys are free, and then we have presentations all day tomorrow, and that will conclude the NNP symposium for November. So we hope that we see you guys in some of our other presentations and that you guys are able to jump in.
Goodbye.
And it does look like we have one question. Do you want to answer one more question?
Yes, please.
Okay.
How will we happen?
Last one. Says, couldn't counterfeiters fake weight with non-silver fill, but still weigh correct?
Of course, it is technically possible, but if you consider the metallurgical knowledge of that time, it would be much more difficult. It would be possible, but you need much more advanced understanding of the metallurgy in order to simulate the weight. What they were doing, they were creating similar coins with metals like bronze or copper that they were familiar to utilize, and then cover it with a thin layer of silver. That was good enough to cheat in everyday market, but it was not good enough to cheat with the professional inspectors of that time. Acoustic emission was the way to identify.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, that's all the questions. So we will sign off for this presentation, and we hope to see you guys at another presentation. So thank you very much, George.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.